I'm joined by Phil Osborne, Air Marshal Phil Osborne, former Chief of Defence Intelligence for the UK. Phil, thanks for being with us. Let's look at where we are on as we enter week 3 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. What's it looking like on the ground? We'll take a look at this wide map of the situation.
So I think if we step back just for a moment, remember this is not where Russia planned to be. Day 2, day 3, they expected decapitation, take Kiev, replace the government, start to build a land bridge between Crimea and Luhansk, Donetsk. What we're actually now seeing is a stagnating Russian slog against really spirited, really capable Ukrainian resistance.
Yeah, we can see where the Ukrainians are still holding those cities, but the fight for the south does seem to be moving slightly more differently. Let's take a closer look at the southern picture right now and talk us through the Russian advances that have been made. And we've got there the only city that has been taken by Russia, the city of Kherson. Tell us what's happening in the fight for the south.
So what we're seeing is Russia probably executing what was originally part of the plan, that join-up of the Crimea with the, if you like, the Russian-controlled, previously Russian-controlled states in the east. That's going on today. More success in the south and the north, but not nearly as successful as the Russians would hope to be. If we look to the west, we can see Russia almost certainly trying to take Odessa, to cut off Ukraine from the Black Sea, which will have a pretty significant economic impact from a Ukrainian, but also from a global perspective. And then coming right to join up with forces around Donetsk and Luhansk. And that's why we're seeing the particularly difficult, particularly dangerous, damaging conflict going on around Mariupol.
Yeah, and we saw those pictures yesterday evening, didn't we, of the strike on that maternity hospital in Mariupol. I mean, how is that a strategy that's going to help the Russians win this war by bombing a hospital?
So I think from a Mariupol perspective, we're seeing in Mariupol exactly what we would be seeing in other Ukrainian cities, what we already have seen. Should we be shocked? Yes. Disgusted? Yes. Surprised? No. This demonstrates Russia's lack of military options. Ukrainian armed forces have gone into the city and therefore they really have got to try and take those cities or starve them out. Yeah. That also gives the West a problem because it puts the West on the spot. There's a humanitarian challenge for the West and this therefore is quite a useful political tool from a Russian perspective.
OK, let's take a look at the campaign for the north. Now, as we've known for the past 2 weeks, there is that Russian convoy that's moving in on Kiev, 40 miles long, but hasn't really got very far. What's happened with that, Phil? And tell us about the tactics to try and take the
campaign. So it's a 40-mile traffic jam, and it probably wasn't just one convoy, it was a number of convoys which have now come together. That feels quite stagnant, although Russia is trying hard to recover that logistical nightmare. Where it's also applying pressure around Kiev is coming from the east, as we can see on the map, trying to encircle the capital, trying to put it under significant amount of pressure. What's also notable probably about this theatre is the Russians have finally admitted using the TOS-1 Alpha thermobaric weapon to the north and east of Kiev.
Yeah, and we think that's about where it was used. Tell us more about this TOS-19 Alpha.
So this is a multi-launch rocket system, but what's different about it is it generates conventional blast, so really highly significant blast effects, far beyond normal artillery or air-delivered munitions. If you like, it's a conventional weapon of mass destruction. The kind of ways to use it under law of armed conflict, you'd have to be only using it against enemy troops, if you like, military personnel, and in a way that didn't produce disproportionate effects. Certainly you shouldn't be using it if there's a risk of civilian casualties, and the use of this weapon in any built-up area, that risk is clearly there. Yeah, and this comes after we've heard, of course, about that strike on Mariupol and talk yesterday of chemical weapons, biological weapons factories. So the risk of escalation is always going to be there. We've seen a Russian narrative preparing the ground for potential use of chemical weapons, talking about the US and Ukraine having chemical weapons facilities in Ukraine. I think we can put no credence on that at all. But what that does is that starts to introduce some level of unbalance to an already difficult narrative from a Western point of view. It also gives the Russians cover to use chemical weapons in that dreadful circumstance that they think it's the only option available to them.
OK, Air Marshal Phil Osborne, thank you very much for that. More from you throughout the day. Thank you.